Hey guys, number one Marmaduke fan here, looking at some more dollar comics. I've just got a couple Flash ones because I think by having the same character, it kind of lets me make a nice compare contrast. So this is presenting the Flash. It's Flash number one, but from 1987. So this would be like probably like volume 2 or volume 3, number one of the Flash, and it's Wally West just stepping into the role of the Flash for the first time, really kind of coming into his own after spending years as Kid Flash. I actually haven't read tons of Flash comics, but I had like a handful of fun Flash comics from like the 70s with Barry Allen as the Flash and Wally West as Kid Flash. And the Flash was a surprisingly popular character in the Silver Age. Barry Allen as the Flash, you could probably say he's the most popular character to have come out of the Silver Age, I think. And that era is a really fun balance of the comics still being very fun. The rogues villains will have plays and come up with harebrained schemes to get rid of the Flash. They know that fun is a big part of the appeal. And then I think that was the decade where they gradually started to maybe go beyond the golden age silly story. Oh, what if a bad guy turned everybody into flower pots, right? And then started asking some tough questions. And the 80s, I think by the 80s you would start saying this is the Bronze Age. Barry Allen's retired, a new guy is stepping into the role, and there's still this kind of like ongoing theme of big questions with the fun superheroes, but it's sort of like the funness hasn't gone out of it yet. And this is also, I realized as I was reading this, I hadn't read this before, this is the inspiration for an episode of the Young Justice series. And it's kind of interesting where they took the basic plot and kind of had the similar theme of Wally West coming into his own and learning to grow up in both stories, but very different presentation, very different vibe in the comic and the Young Justice episode it eventually inspired. The modern comic is Flash Rebirth, number one, written by Geoff Johns and drawn by Ethan Van Sciver. And I guess my problem with it is it's very much not the Bronze Age, but it's too much of the modern or postmodern age of comics, where they're referencing long histories of these characters and all these, universe adventures. Barry Allen's back from the dead, and people aren't adjusting to that. Johns is setting up some mystery box where I guess Dr. Zoom or someone is back. So there are some good things. Like there's some good stuff, like the Central City, celebrating Barry Allen and having like a Flash parade. All of the old Justice Society coming back, and a lot of them talking about how much Barry Allen as a hero meant to them and how much he inspired them, young and old. Bart Allen kind of is a bit of a viewpoint character for us. Well, he was dead, and he had a good death, and now it's being undone. So it all feels weird. Barry has some internal monologue, and I guess Johns is making the point that Barry has a very black and white, kind of like tough police guy worldview. So he kind of identifies with Hal a little bit because Hal Jordan's also a police officer. So they're like brothers in blue. I don't know. Like I'm not sure what Geoff Johns is doing with it. So when he says, "Oh, Barry Allen has this black and white moral worldview," is he criticizing him for that? Is he building up to something? It just feels like a jaded thing where in the older comics, of course, they had this black and white worldview. They're simple stories for children about good triumphing over evil. So it feels like, I don't know, I just don't know what to expect with it. I guess I'd have to pick up the trade paperback, but the art, Van Sciver's art is very detailed, very, muscular, heroic-looking superheroes, but a little stiff on some things like his kids and stuff look a little stiff. And I don't know, it's just not... There are little bits and pieces of fun, but a kid wouldn't get it, basically. It's referencing too much Flash history for you to, like, if you don't know who everybody is, it's hard to care or get invested in that. Now, what's really interesting about this Flash number one is it also references some past events, but it just basically tells you just enough to know what the status quo is for Wally West these days. He's lost some of his powers. He can't reach light speed anymore. He can barely do like the speed of sound these days, and it costs him. And Barry Allen has recently died, and he stepped into the role. And this is kind of like underscoring the problem of like, how does a superhero balance the superheroing with their daily life when they're like a poor sucker. So poor Wally West, he misses his birthday basically to deliver this heart, and he kind of makes the point that, well, look, you're asking me basically to run a marathon and nearly kill myself doing this. I would like payment for my services. I would like some health insurance for if I get injured while doing this. And you can tell they all kind of think he's a scumbag just for saying it. But he that later reveals that his hero, Barry Allen, died in mounds and mounds of debt and was kind of a really stoic hero, which is it's his ideal of what a hero is, but he doesn't want to ruin his life at the same time doing this. He wants a work-life balance. There's that aspect of it. There's some really great sequences where he's running and stopping and realizing something is going on. So let me contrast this with the cartoon. In the cartoon, Wally West is a little kid, teenager who wants glory. And while the rest of the team are out having this glorious fight, he has to deliver this heart, and he just wants to deliver the heart as fast as possible and go get some glory. And then the beautiful revelation at the end is actually the heart was the more important part of the mission, and he never realized it. In this, he's delivering a heart for an older woman he admires, and he's also having these problems coming to terms with who he is. But he's a 20-year-old coming to terms with who he is, not a 14-year-old coming to terms with who he is. So some of his selfish things, like wanting payment, needing a plane ride back, some of that is people just expect him to do superhero stuff, and they have no concept that there's actually a cost to doing what's right. And he's just sort of come to terms with the fact that Barry Allen paid the highest cost possible to do what's right. After that, he gets in some more adventures. Every time he moves, it's basically a struggle, and he has to eat. So refreshing his metabolism is sort of like, it's almost like he has this medical condition that's a result of his superheroisms. That's a problem, right? That's a nice, mature thing. He's still trying to be a hero. He's trying to do the right thing. He's trying to fix problems. There's a struggle aspect to it. And then Vandal Savage shows up at the end, and it sets up the next adventure. So it's not as self-contained as the cartoon. And Vandal Savage is a little bit more of a mysterious character in this, as opposed to the cartoon where he's more of an established villain. But it was just interesting to see the basic, Flash has got to deliver a heart story, and he has to think through his problems as he's delivering the heart. Whereas in the cartoon, it's the teenage Wally West growing up and learning to be mature and be a man. And comic book Wally West, it's him basically coming to terms with the fact that being a hero will always have this immense cost on him. That's great. I had a thought that good superhero comics are like Harry Potter, where Harry Potter has this great theme of liberty, but if you never read anything but Harry Potter, it's sort of like you don't have an ability to, I think, correctly interpret the story. So you say everyone who disagrees with me is a Death Eater, and that kind of makes me cringe about Harry Potter, but there still is a really good moral substance to Harry Potter. I think that good superhero stories are supposed to give you these really good morally substantive stories where then as you grow up and read more, you start to get a developed understanding of how this applies to the real world. But that's a really substantive thought for a kid's book, is that being a hero isn't all fun and games. There's a cost to it. So fantastic. It's not that I hated the modern age comic. It's just that it's such... It has all of the aspects of it in modern age comics that you basically have to read decades and decades and decades worth of comics just to understand all the references. And this, he lost his powers somehow, but who cares? We've got a new status quo. Let's get you into the world, and let's start talking about things in a self-contained little story. And they do set up a villain, but the whole heart plot was self-contained and found resolution. It basically ends with a bad guy showing up and him not being sure what is happening to everybody, right? It's just, it needed to be read, published in trade. They almost shouldn't release it in floppy format if it's supposed to be read in trade paperback format. So this is a good one to pick up. I don't know how expensive the old original one would be, but let's talk about the artists real quick. The artist for this one, Mike Barron's the writer. Jackson Geese is the penciler, and Larry Malstedt is the inker. And I've never seen their names before. Geese has, really good solid figure drawings, and Malstedt has sort of careful inking, like just very careful, deliberate black shadows in a few places and sort of light line work everywhere. Almost a little too light, but very clean, very professional, gorgeous overall example of, the crisp professional, beautiful figure 80s comic. Same thing where they're in the new coloring. Like the new coloring is pretty good. I like that they're not doing like the overly rendered shading coloring, but you can tell there are scenes like this where it looks awkward in the new pristine color format, where it would look more normal in the old school format, because this would all be halftone dots and this would unite better. Pretty good coloring job. I'm happy with it. Great $1 comic. All right, that's it. Number one Marmaduke fan. I love you guys. Catch you later.